Hey everyone, I'm Parker, co-founder of Deco Exchange. Ever been told that crafting is just a hobby? Well, we've turned our passion for crafting into a thriving 8-figure business, surrounded ourselves with an incredible community, and learned countless valuable lessons along the way. From navigating business challenges to celebrating wins, we've seen firsthand that makers mean business. Join me as we dive deep into these stories, strategies, and secrets behind making your craft a successful enterprise. Because here at Makers Mean Business, we're all about proving that makers aren't just making, they're building dreams and running businesses. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, good night. What is going on, you guys? It is Parker here with the Makers Mean Business podcast. Yo, I'm back for another episode. We are really just starting off a series all about shipping. The first episode, I talked a little bit about just basics and kind of general information in case you've never shipped before or you don't really know much of the lingo or whatever it may be. That was episode 1. Episode 2, we talked a little bit about actual packaging solutions, where to get boxes, stuff like that. On today's episode, we're going to talk about cost strategies, saving money, planning for shipping costs, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be an interesting one for sure. I know as business owners, the money matters, right? Whether it's saving money, spending money, planning for spending money, recovering money, all the things. If you guys have never listened before, if you guys don't know who I am, I'm Parker. I co-own Deco Exchange. We ship around 12,000 or so packages per month. I can really attest to saving a few cents on every package is a huge deal, right? If we're talking about the volume that we do on a normal month. But I know even as a small business, saving those dollars and cents here and there really does make a difference. So I really wanted to take today's episode and talk all about different strategies, different things that kind of go through my mind, different things that I've seen to help save money. Just as a quick recap, there's 3 main factors that go into the cost of shipping a box or shipping in anything: the size, the weight, and the distance. You can control at least one of those things to an extent, right? The distance you can't really change because where a customer purchases something and where you are is fixed, right? You can't really do much about that part. The weight is what the weight is, right? If you're shipping a wreath, if you're shipping a handmade product, whatever it is, it weighs what it does. Now you can always say, maybe I stuffed the box too much, or maybe I put too many things, or maybe the box is too heavy, or whatever it is. So one thing I want to let you guys know right off the bat, you only really need to worry about whole numbers once you're over like a pound. Once you're over a pound, the number just gets rounded up for the most part anyway. I know with FedEx and UPS that's absolutely true. USPS might be a little different, but I know for FedEx and UPS, it just gets rounded up to the pound. So if you have 4.1 pounds, it's really going to get treated as 5 pounds. So you have a lot of wiggle room between there. So if you're really on the cusp of like 4.1, if there's something you can do to get it down to 4.0, that will serve you better than worrying about trying to get something that's 4.7 down to 4.5 or something like that. So that's one thing to keep in mind right off the top there. And then the last thing is going to be the size. So the size you can control to an extent. I am absolutely not saying shove your stuff in the smallest box possible. What I'm saying is put your stuff in the smallest size box possible that makes sense. Use a little bit of common sense, use some logic, think about how you would want to receive something. I guess I say that way because we ship a lot of wreaths. I could shove a wreath in a tiny box, right? But I want to also remind you guys of the customer experience. When a customer gets a box and it's something that's all smushed and they have to spend time fluffing it out. How many of you guys have seen, I know we have a lot of wreath makers watching, so I talk to you guys a lot. How many of you guys have seen someone's wreath on their door and it's not fluffed out, it's not cute, it looks like they shoved it in the attic and pulled it out and didn't really spend much time? That's probably your average customer if they're buying something off of Etsy or your website or whatever. So I personally believe that putting it in a proper size box where it's not all smushed and it's not all flattened really adds value because they don't have to fluff it. It looks nice straight out of the box. Now, that being said, you can put it in too big of a box, right? You want to make sure that it's snug, but not too big. I know people ask us all of the time, what size box do we ship our wreaths? Y'all, it varies. Sometimes Damon goes off the rocker and makes a huge wreath, and sometimes it's tinier, and sometimes Mel comes over and makes a pancake wreath, and it just depends. But use your best judgment and put it in a box that's adequately sized. You don't want to go too small. You don't want to go too big. Moving on to actual things that you can do to save on shipping. You're always going to get better prices if you can put all of your, how do I say this? You put all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak. And we'll talk about negotiating in a minute here, but I say that because if you do the majority of your shipping with one carrier, you can talk to that carrier and get better rates from them. You can go to them and say, hey, I ship XYZ boxes per month. I'm paying retail value on the labels right now. What can you do to help? So that's one thing that you can do. If you're just starting out, it probably won't serve you well to go with that strategy. What you probably should do is shop around, right? You should go look at a FedEx rate, look at a UPS rate, look at a post office rate, and then pick the cheapest one, because that's going to serve you right now. And the reality is you may not have the volume to go to FedEx or UPS and say, hey, I'm shipping XYZ, and it actually means something to them. So shopping around is going to be the easiest, lowest hanging fruit when it comes to reducing the cost. If you have anything over a 12 by 12 box or a 1 cubic foot box, most likely the post office will not be what you want to ship with. That's just like a quick rule of thumb. Now, does that rule get broken sometimes? Yes. But again, I come from the world of shipping huge 22 by 22 by 4 by 6 by 8 by 12 boxes. And most of the time, the post office is not competitive at all when it comes to that stuff. But I have seen it. I'm sure I'll see it in the future. It is possible. So make sure that you shop around. The next thing I want to talk about is using other people's rates, right? There are services out there that have negotiated rates that are cheaper than retail. Sometimes they have a fee that you pay per month. Sometimes they just add a couple cents or a dollar or whatever to the cost of the label. And in my experience, that is worth looking into if you hit a certain breakpoint. Let's just say probably 10 to 20 boxes per month or something like that. It will change from time to time. There is a provider that we partner with. It's called Parcel Path. You can go to cheaperwreathshipping.com to sign up. I want to say it's free. I want to say they just mark up the cost of the label just a little bit, where it's still cheaper than retail and you still get a good deal. Full disclosure, we do get a little bit of a kickback if you sign up, but it has served us well in the past. It's served our previous customers in the past, our current customers now. So that is Parcel Path. You can go to cheaperwreathshipping.com to sign up for that. A few other ones out there. We hear about Pirate Ship all the time. We hear about Shippo all the time. We hear about, I think those are the other big two that kind of come to mind. You can absolutely check those out. I know we have an agreement with Parcel Path, but the reality is I want you guys to get the best rates. So if one of those other providers is giving you the best rates, then you should use that. I want you guys to win and not just go to the one where we get a kickback. What I would do is check all of them. The reality is sometimes they switch from a FedEx contract to a UPS contract to a different contract and kind of flop back and forth. So at any given point, one of those may be providing you with a good FedEx rate. One of them may be giving you a good UPS rate. So it can vary wildly. It also really depends on where it's going. It's worth kind of spending a little bit of time to look through those different options. The next thing I wanted to touch on, I think I mentioned it, but you really want to shop around, whether it be the different carriers or the different label providers or checking the retail. I know sometimes FedEx.com or UPS.com has a 50 or 60% coupon that you can just use to print a label straight from there. It's definitely worth doing that. I know Etsy has some built-in shipping rates. I know Shopify has some built-in shipping rates. So you really want to spend time looking around, because saving $1 here, $1 there, it's a big deal, especially as you continue to grow, especially as you continue to ship more. Budgets are tight, profits are low, especially as a small business. Every little thing counts. So I just want to let you guys know that there is a lot of options out there, and it's worth looking around to see what works, what doesn't work, what costs less, what costs more, and get a feel for that. I'm going to segue into the last point that I really wanted to make in this episode. It combines the previous topic with this upcoming one. you really want to keep track of your data. I know I'm a previous engineer. I know I love some analytics. I know I love the technology and the tech side, and I just think that way. But going into talking about negotiated rates, you want to have as much ammunition as possible when it comes to leveraging what your business brings to the table. And if you don't keep track of how much you're spending, how many labels you're printing, how many packages are going out, where you're shipping to, where your most frequent customers are, where your most frequent box sizes are, all of that is really great information to have, because you can talk to these carriers and say, hey, I'm shipping X boxes per month. On average, they're this size. Most of my business is in the Gulf Coast. All three of those things that I just said, it makes it easier for those carriers to give you a better rate. Because if you go in and say, I'm shipping somewhere between 10 and 500 boxes per month, that's really hard for them to wrap their head around. If you go in and you say, oh, I don't really know what size boxes I ship in, that makes it really hard for them to help you. If you don't say where most of your stuff is going, and you might just say it's all across the US, and that's totally fine. But if it's all concentrated in one area, they go to their bosses, they go to their leadership, they go to their board, whatever it is, I don't know the specific term, and they basically pitch a case for you. And if you give them all of this information, it makes it that much easier for them to pinpoint how they can help you best. It makes it easier for them to go to their bosses and say, hey, we have this small business, it's growing, they're shipping X many boxes, mostly in Texas. What can we do? What kind of rates can we get them? And they can specify better rates to a certain area on a certain box size. They can do all kinds of stuff. So if you go to them with that information, it makes it that much easier for them to help you. And y'all, you might think, oh, the FedEx guys should know all this stuff. They're just salesmen. Most of the people that you talk to are just sales guys. They're just account managers. They don't really deal with the data. They just pass all of this information on. They have these I don't want to say like the nerdy people, but the tech people in the background that are just running all this data and doing all of the heavy lifting when it comes to making sure that their business is still going to make money. And you're just handing them that to them in a nice little package, and it's easier for them to take it and run with it. So that's really my biggest tip. Y'all, there's all kinds of strategy when it comes to leveraging and, how to talk to them and all that stuff. But the biggest thing is to make sure that you are giving them important, adequate data so that you can help them help you. Y'all, those are the three big topics that I wanted to cover today. I touched on what factors go into the shipping cost. I talked on different tips on actually how to save on shipping. And then lastly, I talked a little bit about negotiating rates and what I think is important when you're trying to do that. Y'all, if you enjoyed this episode of Makers Mean Business, you can always subscribe to the podcast. We are available anywhere you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the things. If you have been loving the stuff that I've been sharing, y'all, we share even more. It's available in our business coaching group. You can go to themakersuniversity.com or check the link in the show notes and sign up. It is a subscription, but we have 6 business coaches. They all have different experience. They all have different backgrounds. They all have different teaching styles. So it's sure to give you whatever it is you need. You can always find that coaching or teaching style that you're interested in. We have office hours 5 days a week. We have recorded tutorials. We have a ton of stuff available in our membership site, and we cover all kinds of things for handmade businesses. Right now, AI is super hot, so we have a lot of great training on that. Selling online, of course, marketing, social media, all those things. All of that is available at themakersuniversity.com. I would just love it to have you guys join. But other than that, y'all, I'll be back next week. We are going to be talking about, let me check my notes here. We're going to be talking about how we deal with shipping issues in general. I know it's not always fun to talk about all the things that go wrong and how to deal with them, but I'd rather bring it up and just bring it straight out, and we can talk about how to be ready for it instead of getting yourself in a situation where you've never dealt with this before and how do you do it. So I like to bring that stuff up. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. I'll see you guys then. Bye, y'all.